We live again. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Yay.
Oh, I forgot my
Well, to
uh
both of us, too
cheers.
long for a full pound. I'm drinking the whole day, sis.
Oh, and that's
Oh
what's
my
so
goodness.
funny is I bought some Black Girl Magic wine. I'm going to open it up soon. There she is. Yay.
Lower the volume. Lower the volume. Is my volume
Hi,
okay?
hi. Yep.
Hi
Hi.
guys. Hi, Miriam. How are you?
I'm
Good.
doing
Oh, I have
great.
something in the background. Do I? Oh my god! Like all this stuff just opened up all of a sudden. Like I had restarted my computer and it just went a little wild. So
Oh,
I'm
you're
like,
fine. I mean, we just went live, so you're totally fine.
hi guys.
All right. Well, I'll introduce since this is my day.
This is a peculiar day.
I really am enjoying this day. It's like Christmas.
Aw.
Um, my name is Ashley Jackson, and I am the founder of Timeless Dream Events and the admin of this beautiful, wonderful group of caregivers called Caregiving. Sorry, Caring for the Caregiver, Treat Yourself. And I recently launched a book like today, recently.
Yay!
Lost Travel Found. It's here. It's here. I'm so excited. And I want to pass it off to my fellow caregiver advocate and author, Meriam.
Thank you, Ashley. First of all, congratulations on the publication of your book, Lost Travel Found. My name is Meriam Boldewijn, and I'm a motivational speaker, devoted wife, caregiver advocate, and author of Caregiver 2.0 From Burnout to Powerhouse. My book was launched a week ago, and of course, I couldn't miss this celebration.
Yay! That's so exciting. So fun. Congratulations, both of you ladies.
Thank you. And our guest speaker today, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. First of all, congratulations, Miriam, and now Ashley, to be a part of the Authors Club. So excited for you too. And absolutely really wishing you all the love and light and luck through this journey, that it reaches the hands of all the people that needs to hear your message. So absolutely so thrilled to be a part of your journey today. Ashley, thank you for having me here. My name is Gunjani, and I am a licensed mental health therapist, and I am now a newly wellness and transformation coach. I'm currently working on being a certified breath work coach. So all this stuff happening in my life currently, but love what I do. I specialize in treating depression, anxiety, trauma, grief, loss, and addiction. I've been through my own journey, and one day plan to be a part of the Authors Club, but it's still in making. So I'm really happy to be part of, and learning from you guys, and just doing the work that I do, and having the opportunity to meet all the amazing, beautiful souls that come my way, that I get to impact and help and love and hope be compassionate with, because someday someone did that for me. So I absolutely love what I do and passionate about it, and wake up to it thrilled and wanting to help and give. And in the process of my healing, I've learned to take care of myself too, because that was something that I didn't know, and learned it the hard way. So totally thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I'm sure Miriam can relate, but that's basically like what my book, and I know Miriam's book is about too, is kind of learning to take care of yourself the hard way because you burn out. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And that's a big portion of my book. Lost
Mm,
Travel Found is um, the traumas of caregiving, and
mm,
I know the very first time you and I talked, Gunjani, was oh gosh, it was last year sometime in the fall.
Yeah.
And I was telling you how traumatic caregiving could be. And I wasn't sure if traumatic was being dramatic, but you made me feel comfortable and sane when I said that, because I had to go through things and see things that I never thought I was going to have to. So, and when I've talked to other caregivers like Meriam and Lisa, I know you've mentioned too. Thanks for tuning in. Just how traumatic the things that we see and go through as caregivers can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it helps when you voice your story. I'm hoping that people will get that from my book. Like, it's okay to share. It's not easy.
It is absolutely not. Vulnerability and putting yourself out there is one of the hardest things that we go through in life. But when we get to that place by doing all the work we had to do to, like you say in your message, turning your pain into purpose for yourself and for people to find that hope when they're going through their journeys.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we caregivers go through a lot. I can't say it often enough, but we go through a lot, and I know that Ashley has prepared some reading for us, nice reading for us from her book. And I can't wait to hear it coming from your mouth now.
Okay. Here we go.
Let's dive right in.
Yeah, she's always ready. I tell you that much.
I love it. But that's one thing I wanted to say to something that before you begin, the word trauma. And I think as society, now I'm so glad to hear, with Oprah talking about trauma, with some of the stuff that I've been like, more people, more experts, more specialists that we in the trauma world, that we speak about it and normalize, and not normalize as in trauma is normal, but that people's experiences are unique and what they go through in their formative years of life. And to me, formative years of life starts, obviously from birth or pre-birth to all the way till 27, because I truly believe that the prefrontal part of our brain, the thinking, the smart part of our brain, is not completely developed till 27. And that's the age that, it's like our judgment, our reasoning, our thinking, our rationalizing part of our brain is not completely developed. We are completely operating from those parts of us that just keep flashing and coming up, that are subconscious. And most of our life we live in that subconscious part of our life, based on why it takes one event, one hurt, one deep emotional pain to set you off to be operating from that place, if you have not been able to get the help, the support, the safety, the love, the belonging, the connection, and the community. So in those years, things can happen, and it can really set the trajectory of our life. So I just find it so important to put this message out there, that the developmental trauma is a real thing. People go through these hardships, and it's so important that we hold their hand, support them, help them through whatever it is that they need while they're going through it, so that it doesn't have to impact the rest of their life. So I just had to put that out there.
Wow. And see, I know before I start reading, because the three of us can talk all day.
Yes.
Because a lot of things you say, Gunjani, I can relate to. So I just love our talks. But I know I've read and heard about like a child's love map. And as a young child, during a certain set of years, it's very important that a child receives the proper type of care and love and etc., or else they may possibly grow up into something not good. But I didn't realize 27, it took you until 27 for that to all group together, which makes sense, because I do remember my dad, and I know we've talked extensively about my dad. He always would tell me, wait until after you're 25.
Mhm.
It will be best friends.
Mm.
You know, when you're going into your teenage years and you're like, you're old, you don't know what you're talking about. Yep. And wouldn't you know it, I mean, he became my best friend before 25, thankfully, because
Mhm.
that's my last age that I've had him physically.
Right.
But it's so interesting that you even mentioned that, because
Yeah.
it does that hits home for me personally.
And just to
But
say something real quick before I don't forget, because I don't want to scare people as in, oh, if you've been through something, you're damaged for life, because I know that a lot of people come when I work with them. I really like to mention this. It's just that, you know, just like we change our brain, trauma changes our brain and, you know, the way we perceive and live, healing also changes our brain. So it's not like we're damaged
yeah,
or broken for life. So it's really important to keep that in
absolutely.
mind, that there is that little sliver of hope, even when you don't see it, that just like your things started to change as a result of some of the things you've been through. And I feel very strongly about this these days, that don't ask yourself what's wrong with you. Ask yourself what happened to you and how can you heal from that?
Absolutely. I love that, because that's exactly, especially this passage that I'm going to read. So it's kind of a longer passage, but I chose this one because I know we have a little bit more time together during this talk. So this was a traumatic day for me, and I'll always remember it for the rest of time. So I'm going to start reading. I'll never forget March 28th of 2017, when Troy's scheduled appointment wasn't at his normal doctor's office, but at the Barrett Cancer Center. I remember walking towards the center and saying, "Oh, this can't be good." And Troy heard me and got quiet. As soon as I touched the door handle, I just had this sickening and sinking feeling in my heart. I just knew. That door felt heavy, almost too heavy for me to open, and I wanted to turn around and run away. Sometimes I wish that I would have grabbed Troy's hand and told him, "Let's run away to a remote island." But we wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be reading this story. This Barrett Cancer Center looks small on the outside, but as soon as you get through those doors, you clearly see just how big the inside is and how many floors there are. It was overwhelming for so many different reasons. Why are we meeting at a cancer center? Why are there so many people? Why does cancer hit this many families? What is the next for my family that I'm trying to have? Troy and I checked in for his appointment and waited to be seen, which was excruciating. All the hurry up and wait, all the anticipation like we are about to see Beyonce and Jay-Z perform. But no, we are waiting in a hospital, waiting to see what trajectory our life's path was about to take. Those 10 to 15 minutes seemed like it took forever. Caregivers, you know what I'm talking about. I just want to be told what is happening and how to prepare my life around the news. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to hear. When we got called back to see the doctor, I remember firmly holding Troy's hand as a reassurance that I had his back. I'm not going anywhere.
Let's all take a deep breath. And you are so right. Caregivers, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, Ashley, I know what you're talking about. And your sentence, we are waiting in the hospital, waiting to see what trajectory our life's path was about to take. Those 10 to 15 minutes seemed like it took forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it feels like forever, and it takes a lot of courage to put this in writing, to get it off of your chest.
Yeah.
And I know the feeling like, okay, let's run away. But we can't run away. That's the hard part.
Right.
That's why caregiving is so challenging, both mentally and physically.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yes, I know what you're talking about. And Stacy mentioned something in an earlier conversation that if you're a caregiver, you know what we go through. If you're not a caregiver, maybe parents will understand it. But for non caregivers, people who are not caregiving, it's hard to understand.
Mhm.
And that's why I want to thank you again for what you have done now to put this in writing, to write a book, to share your story. Because I realize again, now that I've heard your story, that it's so important to let the world know what we are going through.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I I've told you before. I've heard a few lines in the first, in the kickoff, and now I hear this. I know the story, but the more I hear it, now that I hear it coming from your mouth, I am more convinced that everybody should read Lost Travel Found because it's for caregivers and non-caregivers.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to say about this part, this paragraph of your book. And the fear, the anxiety, yes, I know what you're talking about.
It's just something about sitting inside of a hospital or doctor's office, and when you just have this thought that you don't want to, you want to hope for the best. You don't want to hear any
Mm,
negative news. But there's just something about it when you're sitting there and you just know. Like no one has to tell you. You just know, right?
Mhm.
And it's so I think that's where for this phase of my life, that's where trauma started. Was
Oh,
March
absolutely.
28th, 2017. Because nobody wants to hear what came after that paragraph. Um, so, and for non caregivers, I think it's important for them to read those thoughts, what happened, because you never know. You might have to become a caregiver at one point in your life. You might need a caregiver at one point in your life.
Mhm.
I think it's important for non-caregivers to hear, to read, to see these things as well.
Absolutely. Couple things stick out for me as you talk about this, and I find this so important that we mention this as we mention caregiver trauma and non-caregiver trauma. In the trauma world, we call it vicarious trauma or secondary trauma. When you are serving others, and as a result of that, that's the trajectory of your life is changing. And trauma lies in the eye of the beholder. To you, for in any given situation, two people can take that situation very differently, um, so everything that you went through is absolutely valid, and I'm so happy to see that you're able to voice this, because it's almost healing in certain ways when you're able to put this out there, and share your story and your pain and your suffering with other people so that they can relate to that healing or hope. So I think it's absolutely important to keep that in our background, that trauma is when any event or an experience has an effect or impact on your life. And something that felt very uncontrollable, unpredictable, and too severe can feel very traumatic, or can be experienced as trauma. But the other thing that stuck out for me was, unfortunately, growing up, I'm guessing, or I'm hypothesizing, that this was similar for you guys, but you can absolutely correct me if I'm wrong. But most of us were not raised in secure attachment situations, where it's not just secure attachment that our parents didn't mean well. They did the best as they knew how, given their lives and their trauma, right? And we weren't taught emotional wellness. We weren't, a lot of us, like I wasn't taught emotions. I wasn't taught it's okay to feel emotions. I wasn't taught, I was taught, oh, emotions are weak. They're something that girls feel,
Oh no,
emotional.
Jacksons wear their hearts on their sleeves.
Oh, awesome. Woo.
Now, but my husband's side, no,
exactly.
I don't, there's no emotion.
Exactly.
And like, I'm over here, and he's just looking at me like, you okay? Do you want tissue?
So exactly, two people in a given situation react very differently based on how they were raised, on their environment, the culture, the conditioning, all of that, right? And I think it's very important. And now in these days, like since last year, I mean, as much as I knew, I think a lot of times I was in my headspace, in my science knowingness, and I'm finally getting in my place of beingness and connecting to my higher purpose and the spirituality of things. I truly believe that sometimes when we experience things like that, it's so important that we just sit with it instead of just rushing to just feel better or getting better or just being on the other side, instead of just sitting with those emotions, experiencing in our bodies, because our brain sends emotions in our body and it's just a data information like, hey, you care about something, these are your values, this is what's affected. And to me, it's like, take a pause, notice what you're feeling, because a lot of us are so used to judging it, pushing it down, running away from it, escaping it, and then it gets twisted, resets, and comes back tenfold when we're not ready for it. And it's like, whoa, what just happened? So I think sometimes it's just so important. There's a whole concept called emotional agility in this amazing Harvard scientist on emotions. Her name is Dr. Susan David, and I really love her work. And she's all about, when you go through grief or when you go through trauma, because grieving, it's like, you can experience grieving as a part of this process. Like, oh my goodness, our life is about to change forever. And what does this mean for us from what we had anticipated? So forming your new, it's not just grieving the loss of your old life, but it's also forming new identity as a result of that grief and this new what it is, right? So in that, I think it's just really important to examine and sort of take a step back and look at it from an awareness of, I'm not in it, I'm observing this, I'm becoming curious about this. What is this trying to teach me? What are the lessons? Instead of why me, asking, what are the lessons I'm learning in this? What does this mean for me? If I don't like it, that's okay. Being compassionate and sitting with it and surrendering to it instead of resisting it so much and pulling yourself back and just observing, just like, because the needs that get affected as a result of these processes is, I want to feel loved. I want to feel comforted. I want to be connected. I want to be validated, that it's all okay, that it's all allowed to exist, that it'll be figured out at some point. But for right now, it just is. And I'm going to sit with it and learn from it and grow from it.
Yeah. You're muted.
Yep, I forgot I was muted. I just wanted to point out what Lisa said, that the trajectory can be so overwhelming with trauma and we are not prepared to deal with the emotions that exist with it. When I was speaking with Sarah, who is both Meriam and I's writing coach and editor, as I was telling her my story and my pain points, she would say, hold on, we're going to write that down because that's going to be a part of your book. And I'm like, but I'm just talking. I don't want to write about it. I don't want hundreds, thousands of people to read that. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, that's why you're writing a book, is to help you kind of breathe, take that load off your shoulders and let people know what it is that you have gone through, because you don't know who you're going to help. And she's so right. And, Meriam and I were talking earlier, and we've said this before, that, writing a book is hard. So many people start, but then don't finish because of how hard it is. But, today, and that's why I'm so thankful. I'm so excited. I'm celebrating all day, all week, and all month, all the rest of the year, because of how hard it is. And I really put myself out there. I actually wrote a few stories that my husband Troy didn't even know about my specific caregiving journey. He came into the room one time crying, and he just said, "You never told me that your reaction or this happened to you while you were caring for me." And I said, I had to tell him, like, it wasn't meant for you to know at that time. Not when you're getting pumped full of chemo am I going to tell you that I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. Not when you're about to have this major surgery am I going to tell you that I don't think I'm strong enough for this. I wasn't going to tell you those things. But he got to read it just like everyone else that, will get the book, that have pre-ordered the book, want to order it today, order it this weekend sometime, even next week, even next month. Whoever, whenever, when you get the book is going to speak to you. You'll resonate with it in some form or fashion, whether you're a caregiver or not. And I just want to point out what Stacy just said. Girl, the trauma and the effect on your sleep or non-sleep and the body and mind. That is so true.
It is.
The lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Because they're tossing and turning.
Yeah. And, Ashley, you had so many questions. You had so many questions, and I totally get that. I had so many questions as well. And what happened to me is because I had so many questions, I kept them all in here. So what happened? It drained me. It ate all my energy until I started journaling.
Yep.
That's the way.
What happened? You started journaling and it turned into a book.
But it wasn't easy.
No.
Not at all. It wasn't easy. And I had to make time to journal. I didn't. The first thing I said, no, I don't have time to journal. 3 to 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes. And I said, I don't have time for that.
Yep. You have to make your own time.
I think with the healing process, the things that are good for us, unfortunately, we don't know or we step away from them because in that time we feel so overwhelmed that, it's like for my people, and we've talked about this prior, where the importance of writing and journaling or just dictating and getting it all out. I mean, there's so many studies and research shows that the more the people who write or journal tend to alleviate their symptoms so much more because they're not bottling in. What we bottle in, we store, keep in our bodies. And then, it starts affecting not just our body, mind, brain, and spirit. And it's a very holistic experience. So just writing it can be so cathartic. I mean, that was one thing that I share with you in common, Meriam, that when I went through my journey of recovering from PTSD and trauma and depression, it saved my life because I would just write. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't want to write. But there were days I would write a line. And there were days that I would write paragraphs and pages. And, it was not about something that I was about to publish, but it was just free association writing as if no one was reading. And I just wrote. And it was so cathartic because it was just, I got to get it all out. I didn't have to read it back. I mean, you can flush it, tear it, fire it. It doesn't matter. But the idea is to get it out of you because otherwise it stays in there and wreaks havoc on your physical body, on your mind, on your brain, all kinds of things. And we really change a lot of things. So it can be a very amazing experience if we just take and, in the whole concept of I don't have time, it's like meditating is good for you, but we don't have time. And that's exactly why we should be doing it. Because the amount of brain clarity that we get as a result of just 5-10 minutes of the self-care, self-compassionate, self-love experience, like I care about myself enough where I'm just going to do what feels right to my soul. And even if it doesn't feel right to my soul now, I'm just going to do it anyway so that hoping that I'll be on the other side.
The trick is that, sorry, Ashley, one thing I want to say is that you have to make time to take time.
Oh,
You have to make time by scheduling first. So you can take time to do meditation or journaling.
yes, yes, absolutely. Because it's about letting go, like Ms. Tuzik mentioned. It's just literally, if you don't let it go, it stays in there, and when it stays in there, it causes so much tumultuousness, and it literally can be very scary. And just little by little. And sometimes we keep doing things as humans, in terms of our brain, we keep going back to things that are familiar because we find safety in that. But a lot of times, what in terms of learning, in terms of healing, in terms of trauma, it's like things that we have known, we operate from those wounded, vulnerable parts that have been hurt and ruptured. And if we want to be whole, if we want to be in alignment with who we are, it's really, really important that we stay true to who we are and in alignment with who we are trying to be, as opposed to operating from, when we were 5 or when traumas or whenever these traumatic events occur. So sometimes when those things happen, the thinking and the smart parts of our brain shuts down a little. So we just operate out of fear and, shame and
fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think in that moment, we just need comfort, love, and just compassionate towards ourselves.
Yeah, I know. So a big passion of mine is traveling. Obviously, lost, travel, found. But anytime something gets super heavy, super hard for me, I start looking at flights. And I'm like, I got to get the up out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I've realized over time is your worries, whatever is bothering you, it goes with you.
Oh, absolutely.
So I can't jump a plane and fly to the Netherlands to see Meriam and expect to be like, oh, I left my worries and cares behind home. They come with you. And I've had to learn to, my coping mechanisms, because of trauma, because of grief, I've had to learn mechanisms for me to continue on with my life in a different way, a new normal, if you will. Because of the traumas surrounding cancer itself, I didn't even have it. My husband did, but I'm traumatized from it.
Yeah.
I didn't have it, but my grandpa did. And he lost, well, I'm not going to say he lost his battle. He gained his wings a couple weeks ago.
Sorry about that.
And thank you. I know you've recently had some loss too. So my hatred for cancer is real and it's traumatizing. So you just have to kind of figure out what works for you. My self-care, my coping mechanisms are going to be different than yours, different than Meriam's. I love travel, I love music, and I love to eat. So those are a few of my favorite things that I like to do or experience to, keep me moving. I'm not going to forget and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I have to figure out a way for me to move on in a healthy way. And that's what I've done. And in my book, I literally tell you like what happened to me, how it made me feel, and like, hey, don't be me. Don't be like me. Do XYZ instead. Especially caregivers for that portion. Like, don't do this, but do this, because you'll be further ahead than what I was. Especially with the burnout. So,
Ashley, and even non-caregivers who read your book,
right?
They might have someone in their neighborhood, in their community, in their network who's a caregiver, and they can pass it on. Like, I've read a book, and this is what she did. That's the way it works.
No, Absolutely. One of the things that you said, Ashley, that just struck for me, and in my conversations with people with grief and just my own grief with things, I don't think sometimes we ever move on from certain things. I think we figure out a way to move forward, given that it exists, given that it's never going to go away, given that that's a big part of us. So I always like to remind myself that, it's like, how do I move forward one day at a time, one baby step at a time? And the other thing that you were mentioning in terms of, I recently just in this past week, so as a trauma therapist, I'm trained in a kind of treatment modality called EMDR. And in that we do, it's like bilateral stimulation, and we do a lot of subconscious reprogramming work, because sometimes I just feel like there's a time and place for talking. But just like when a trauma is occurring, we take all this sensory input from the world, the things we see, the things we feel, the things we touch, the things we hear, smell, and it starts from the subconscious brain, whether fight or flight, is this safe, is this not safe, all the memory stuff. And then it goes to slowly travels to the thinking and the perception part of our brain, where we make meaning of the event. So what happens is that a lot of times, like I was saying, there are parts of us that are wounded, vulnerable, or we stay stuck when we are hurt, when there's deep hurt of what we thought it would be, and what it ends up being, or whatever that situation would be. So the parts of us there can be an anxious part of us. There can be a part of us that doesn't feel safe. There is a part of us that doesn't feel loved. There's a part of us that feels unworthy. There's a part of us that is warrior, so just like you were saying, and because I have done this in my life quite a bit. Every 4 years I move, and I'm like, nothing is changing. Eventually I learned that, because I'm like, I'm moving somewhere else, but my baggage is still coming with me. It took me a while to recognize that. But so there's that part of us so it's like a triad, and then it's looking for an emotional need in that moment, which can be appreciation, love, compassion, comfort, belonging, community, connection, and all these different things, and all these innate, deep core emotional needs that we just don't think about. And then there are all these protectors that come out as a result of, coping with that part. And unfortunately, those protectors can be, an addict, or not just addict in the sense of, the drugs, the alcohol, the food that we normally hear, but it's sex, or keeping yourself really busy to run away or distract from things, or, work and hustling to be someone, or find ourselves, or connection, or, that meaning in ourselves. Then
Gunjani, you don't have to talk about me like that.
I relate. So,
but I think this is such like an American standard thing. Like, you hustle until you're in the grave.
I was that person. I would be constantly busy, running away from the stuff that was inside and trying to deal with what's happening. So, it's just, then there's, there's so many different protectors. There's an aggressive, there's a controller, there's a critique, there's all these different parts and protectors that show up in order to deal. So sometimes we operate from those parts or protectors, that protector, and then we get to a place in our life sometime where it's like, it protected us, it kept us safe, it was meant to be there for us, but then we get to a place in our life where it stops working for us and who we are trying to be. So we're not just surviving, but we are thriving. And that's the place, I think, where the real awakening happens, where you're trying to figure out. I think change happens when we recognize that there is a problem and we need to realize what's happening. So everything that happens as a result of trauma, or things that are happening, comes from how we feel safe, protected, loved, connected. And I think instead of looking for it, because most of my life I spent looking for it outward and external things and codependency and all that stuff. And then until I started looking at me, which is what Lisa is mentioning, that self-care, just respecting yourself, what your values are about yourself, how much do you matter to yourself, and what do you do in terms of actions to show yourself that, healthy boundaries, I will not accept this. Healthy boundaries, you can only do so much. Healthy boundaries, I'm at my wit's end. And that's, we are so trained and raised with, no, give, pour from an empty bucket. And eventually we get spent.
I don't have time for that anymore. You know, what Lisa said, you know, when she started her caregiving journey, she had no idea about self-care. Neither did I, you know, until after I burnt out. And then I was like, oh, I have to take care of myself so that I can still be a good and strong caregiver for my husband. But those are things that you learn over time, what works for you, like I said. So, but just start with baby steps.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what Meriam is always telling me. She was always telling me that in the beginning of this journey that we've been on together. Just start with your baby steps. You know, schedule the self-care. Which has worked out really good for me, because if I don't see it on my calendar, then I'm more than likely not going to do it. But, you know, I just appreciate you guys being on here with me today. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, because I am going live so much more today on Instagram. I'll be on Instagram with Avis Hitchcock here in about 15 minutes. She has the Radical Care podcast, and we will be talking on Instagram. Meriam, did you have something you wanted to add? You look like you.
I enjoy listening to you ladies. I enjoy this so much, and we could talk for hours. The only thing I want to say, Lisa, I am so proud of you. You're doing self-care now because you discovered it. And one thing I want to say is that usually we have to realize that we have been knocked down before we can get up again.
Yeah.
It's the realization that
Absolutely.
we've been knocked down. And then we can take the baby steps to get out of that nasty place.
Yep.
So other than that, I am celebrating the whole day with you, lady.
Thank
And
you.
as usual, I
Good, but
conversation with Gunjani. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
it's a pleasure.
If you guys are on Instagram, oh, I got some feedback. Sorry. If you're on Instagram, follow Timeless Dream Events. I'll be going live there next, I think, for the next hour. So follow me there if you're not already, and thank yourself today, because you're doing a good job. Just thank yourself today.
Yes.
All right. And make sure, if you haven't already, go get that Lost Travel Found, y'all. All right.
Can't wait to read it. I'm totally thrilled, and I'm so excited
Thank you.
to be a part of your journey. And I really wish you luck, and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of books in millions of people's hands.
Thank you. Oh,
can read
great.
it. Hey,
Yes, we're going to put
Dream
that
big,
out in
right?
the atmosphere.
you're traveling. You're all about traveling. You're all about learning. You're all about discovering. So why just limit ourselves to the United States? People everywhere go through these things. So
Right.
hopefully there are billions of people, millions need to hear it. So absolutely.
People
you.
from the Netherlands are already ordering, so you're everywhere. You're all over the place.
The Netherlands love me. Thank you. Well, thank you again, ladies. I truly, truly appreciate you both so much. I really do.
Likewise.
And until next time, because I'm sure there'll
we'll
be
see you again.
a part
Yeah.
4. Gosh.
Love you.
Love you
Bye,
guys.
ladies.
Thank you so much. Bye.